Well, I think we've got most of our families here. We're probably gonna have some people arrive. Um, I am so glad that we have so many families join us. As many of you may have heard, we've had our Read Admit Days on campus, and this year we introduced parent panels as a feature of our program. And this was born out of my own search with my own student, in realizing that parents are the folks who I wanted to hear from the most. And whenever there were parents at any of the programs I went to, I would run and talk to them. I'd huddle over in the corner, and those were some of the best conversations. It's a little bit different for me because my son's in kindergarten, and I know you all have high school, you have college students, but just for me to even imagine what that would be like for a parent to let go and have their student go away and think about how much you would stay in touch with them, how much you would speak with them. That's a really big commitment. So I really wanted you all to hear from current Reed parents about their experience with the college and really see the college through their students' eyes from what they see reflected back to them. So while this was a late edition, we've got I think over almost 80 families who wanted to join us, y'all. And again, so glad to have you here. Why don't we start off with some introductions? Why don't I have folks introduce themselves? I'll have you say more later, but tell folks a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and who your student is, like what year they are, what they've decided to major in. And I'll ask a few more questions before I turn it over to families. And for the families who are here, we have a Q&A feature in these webinars. So if you have questions, you could certainly chat with them, but I'm going to pay a lot of attention to the Q&A and basically sort of combine these questions. I might respond to some of them live, or I might combine a few and ask our parents one or a few of them to answer those questions. So feel free to populate the Q&A at any time. I won't start those right away. But why don't we start with introductions? Molly, you're first on my screen. Dave and Jolene, you're next. Rangi and Andrea. Then you. Why don't we do introductions that way?
Sure. I'm Molly Sakahara. I live here in Los Angeles. My son is Andrew. He is a sophomore, which is very, very shocking to say. It does go as fast as people say it does. He is thriving. I can't get him to come back home. I spend more money me flying myself to Portland to see my son than he spends flying back home to LA. So he's definitely found his people. And I'm very happy to be here.
Um, I'm Jolene, and Dave and I live in Hillsborough, which is about 20 miles west of campus. So, our daughter Alicia is a freshman finishing up her first year there at Reed. You see,
Yep.
Dave.
I'm Dave. I'm the other half.
My name's Andrea Keene. Our kiddo is Pip, who is a freshman at Reed. They're studying environmental sciences and they love it. Let's see, what else are we supposed to be saying?
I don't know. There's similar to you, Molly. Our kid does not want to come back. Like what we just booked the flights back, and they're like, "What's the latest I can leave, and what's the earliest I can come back?"
And when we're asked to do this panel, one thing that I said is that I can tell you about the parent experience. I can't tell you a lot about the child experience because trying to get in touch with our kid is sometimes a challenge. Text is great, but whenever we call them, it seems like they're in the dining commons with their friends, and we only have half their attention because the other half, which is a good sign because it means they love the school. They're doing, they're enjoying the academics. They're thriving. It just means that mom and dad are kind of on the back burner. So.
Yeah.
Our parents' hearts are breaking just a little bit. So for each of you, why don't you share with their families the college search process? You're a year or two removed, but you remember what it was like going to the different schools, seeing the different schools, the conversations early on, later. So talk about that, and then about your student actually making the decision to ultimately, attend Reed. And why don't we go in reverse order?
Okay. So when we first started, or our child first started looking at colleges, they wanted to go into environmental engineering. And Reed was the only college or university that did not have an engineering program. So in my mind as a parent, it was going to be the last one on the list. And when we were trying to figure out what, places we were going to visit, they really wanted to visit Reed, which for us being from New Hampshire was going to be the furthest we'd have to travel. So I kind of reluctantly agreed that, okay, we'll go out to, we'll do some schools in Colorado, then we'll jet out to Portland and go back home. Um, and when we got there, I was like, oh, great. This is going to be their first choice. Because it was just such a good fit for our child. And we did go through all the analytical, discussions of, well, if you do want an engineering degree, they do have a program with RPI where they can, do a few years at Reed and then go finish up the degree at RPI. And we did visit RPI. The RPI fellows said, yeah, people who try to enter this program end up spending their entire 4 years at Reed. They don't end up coming here. And so after we visited and after it was apparent that this was where our child was going to want to go, we then had to convince him about it. So yeah, they applied, they got in. So my husband went out for the revisit day, and I think that kind of sold you on the school as well. I mean, it was just
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think
Yeah.
everything about, everything that I heard, everything that they were saying, everything that I was seeing in terms of like just fit like me, but more importantly, my kid, right? It's like, oh, I can see you here. This really fits your personality, your, fits all your needs, all your likes, all that sort of stuff. So,
Yeah. And when we went, I dropped the kid off when school started. And it's funny because, the high school they went to talks about creating a sense of belonging. And it kind of does a good job of that. But like with Reed, there is a sense of belonging. They don't have to create it, it's there. And our child just felt, yeah, when we went to move them into the dorm, it felt like more of a reunion as opposed to a brand new experience because they had already met kids via the Discord server. Um, and so they were just really excited to see everybody they've been talking to online.
That is excellent. Thank you, Rangi. Thank you, Andrea. And we've not met before, so this is this is all new information for me to hear too. But thank you for sharing candidly. Dave, Jolene, how about you two?
Yeah, so Alicia had a few options for where she wanted to go for school, and they ranged from strongly academic to having a very social atmosphere and lifestyle. But I think what really sealed the deal for Reed when we got to become a little bit more aware of the student environment inside the classroom, the small classroom size, the good favorable student to teacher ratio, and the discussion and the learning that she had while going through the orientation process of how the student and the teacher interacts, even outside or after a test might be issued. The two will sit down and talk about it rather than just get the grade and move on with the rest of the teachings. And so is that kind of interaction, that level of detail in the classroom environment that ultimately had Alicia choose Reed over her other choices.
Should I go ahead, Milian, or you want to move on?
No, that's great. Please, Molly.
Okay. Yeah, my son, he was accepted to a couple of the UCs, which is in state. He was accepted to a couple of private colleges, very much in competition with Reed. Even the grant was very competitive on all levels. Technically, the Reed grant was less than some of the other private schools, but what sealed the deal was going to the Reed Admit Day and just getting a real sense of the care that is provided to my son. And ultimately, like the academics are very important, the student teacher ratio, all of that is really important. But if you don't feel like the school's going to take care of your kid as an individual, that's compelling. And I feel like that was what did it for me. That was the point of persuasion is the care that I saw that weekend. and just their overextension of that care. There were people that came into the Los Angeles area and made sure that we made those meetings, met with us. They knew us by name. It was very intimate. The other thing that was really compelling was before even applying to colleges, my son already told me he is very loath to go to UCs because he's not that type of kid that wants that big college with the big, hoorah football team. And so that really narrowed it down for us already. Um, yeah.
Thanks for that, all of you. The next question is I'm gonna ask is how they're doing. So this is sort of what you saw when you first arrived when they made that call. But I'll ask you to each give sort of a brief synopsis to say, hey, this is how things are now that they're here. I'm going to answer one of the questions first in the engineering 3-2 program. So some schools have in my opinion, a way of apologizing immediately that they have a 3-2 program. If you want to do a 3-2 engineering program, you will do a 3-2 engineering program. We send at least 2 or 3 students each year to take advantage of it. And what I say specifically is if you don't want to, it's because a student has chosen not to, for the reasons that you just heard, is that they want to hang around their senior year. They want to be with their friends. And I think that's the case at any school. So it's not about the ability or capability. It's a social choice that a student may make in the future. But there's some students who choose not to make that choice. We've got a great video online that has a student who's been accepted to a 3-2 program and is in it. It's a student who's been recently accepted, a student who's in a 3-2 program and concluding, a faculty advisor, and someone from the Center of Life Beyond Reed. And we're actually working on some more information to be made available to families either by the end of this week, Friday, or early next week, because we are getting a lot of questions about the 3-2 program. So we're going to refresh those resources, and I'll provide those to families in an email. So look forward to hearing more about pre-engineering and some of our pre-professional programs shortly. So back to that question, how are they doing? How's it going?
Do you want me to go first or do you want to do it?
Sure.
Okay.
Anyone,
And I do want to mention the 3-2 program. Our child Pip was considering the 3-2 program, which is why one of the reasons why we toured RPI in addition to Reed. And they decided that's not something they wanted to do. They said, I want to start out just doing environmental science for 4 years. And their thought process is that they could also get a job with somebody who might be willing to pay for the engineering program, because sometimes companies will do that. So that's a decision they're going to make at a later date in terms of engineering. Pip is loving Reed. They are doing great. They didn't even come home for spring break because they wanted to hang out with their friends. They love the academics. They've sent us some pictures of things that they're doing. There was that, what's the name of that short term that they do?
Paideia.
Paideia. They were telling us about things that they were doing during Paideia. And they're like, their focus right now is on creating what they consider a good work-life balance, because they went to a high school that was very academically rigorous. And they're trying to make sure they have enough time for their friends in addition to doing well academically. And because they are doing environmental sciences, that is one of the more challenging programs because of all the labs they do in addition to class time. There's another point I wanted to make, and now I can't remember what it was. Our child also suffered from migraines in high school, and we found that the migraines have actually been greatly reduced when they've been at Reed, and I think it's because they've been able to strike that balance. But it's interesting because their friends, they all seem to really watch out for each other and take care of each other. So one of their friends is like, "Oh, their migraines are really bad," and then Pip's like, "Mom, compared to what I was dealing with before in terms of the number of migraine days and level of pain, it's once in a while something will pop up. I take my meds, it's fine." So it's just interesting that there's that. Not only are they looking out for themselves, but they really take care of each other. So
Alicia is what I forgot to mention earlier. She's doing biochem as her major, so she also has a bunch of labs, and it's a lot of hours in the classroom, which she kind of was sad about this week with the sunshine being out, but she's really loving her classes. She seems to really enjoy, like Dave mentions, the table panel discussions or whatever they call them. And she's being challenged, but she's not having to work, extra hours. She usually takes the weekend off and goofs off with her friends. She's found her people. She seems to really be fitting in great there.
And finding her people, I think, was a very key detail. I mentioned in the earlier portion of this panel that the social aspect was something that Alicia was considering. And Reed is very strong academically. She was a little bit concerned about how things would go socially with a campus as small as this one. But she was able to find her people, find her social network, and get that taken care of pretty quickly. And so as a result of having the good academic environment, along with an outlet with a social network, she's been doing pretty well so far for her freshman year.
Yeah, Andrew, just to give you a background of Andrew, I think Million, you heard this before, is when Andrew was younger in elementary or middle school, when I told him about college and that he would actually be moving out of the house, he was bawling. He was crying that there's no way I'm going to go to college then if I have to move out of the house. Fast forward to he accepted Reed, accepted him. We were so afraid of how he would handle being alone that the whole family took a 9-day vacation to be in Portland with him. And I think by the first day, he was so annoyed with us that we were the only parents still left. So we redid our entire vacation schedule without him because he was already busy with his friends and doing all the things, signing up for all the clubs. You do not have to worry about the social aspect of Reed. Very quickly, he's surrounded by a group of friends. I don't even know how he ended up knowing them that first day. Andrew didn't get work study as part of the package, but he quickly found work. I think one of the messages mentioned that he was a tour guide for one of the parents. And he works a couple other jobs, very, very involved in the campus life. I think the academic side, he's a poli-sci with an econ minor. And that's one of the reasons why I chose Reed, because the major that Andrew was gonna choose, I was a little bit skeptical if that's where he really wanted to land. Just my mom instincts was thinking, I need a college that's gonna expand his thinking to let him think outside of what he thinks he wants. And I think Reed helped him do that.
Thank you. And for families, I do see a few folks putting questions in the chat. If you don't mind, go ahead and put those in the Q&A, and that'll help me be able to track the order they come in, and then I can maybe focus on one place to get those. So we had a question in here, and I wanna sort of get this out of the way right away. You know, let's see. I don't want to rephrase. I don't want to. Well, I'm going to paraphrase because I can't find it right now. But Reed, can you talk about your child's experience with homework? Reed being hard, Reed being a challenge, or how are they engaged in their homework life? And maybe we'll have just a couple parents tackle that one.
I was just gonna say, I already mentioned that Alicia frowns upon working on the weekends, so she seems to have a pretty good balance as far as she wants to hang out with her friends on the weekends, so she gets everything done during the week. And I usually text her at bedtime, and she's asleep by 11 usually, and up for her classes in the morning. She doesn't seem overworked from where we're standing.
Yeah, I think it also depends on what their high school experience is like, because if they've gone to, I mentioned before that Pip went to academically rigorous high school. So for them, when they ended up starting classes at Reed, they might not have found it quite as challenging as some of their peers. And I think what they appreciate about Reed is there's a lot of different kinds of study spaces. So they tend to like to work they actually work in the lounge of a dorm where a lot of their friends live. It's not even their own dorm. I think they go to Trillium to study in the lounge area because they'll put on their noise canceling headphones and they work better when there's like people around them. But they've also said, there's good space in the library to go to. Sometimes they're working in the dining commons. But
and they do have a tutoring, every class you get an hour a week, no charge sort of thing. And they encourage you to use that, even from the beginning, right? I don't even need help necessarily, but just go. There's no sort of stigma attached to going to to those tutorial session sort of thing, which I think is really great that they're encouraged and, not like, oh, you're the dumb one going to a tutor.
Yeah, it's for everyone to do well, right? And there's an hour of tutoring per class per week. So you're in 4 classes, that's 4 free hours of tutoring a week, in addition to office hours by the faculty. I tell people this, I walk out of my office and I see faculty in classes where students can just drop by and talk to them. But it's the benefit of having, no adjunct faculty. Everyone's a full-time faculty member. Your student is their only job. And I do think that makes a difference. All right. How about I'll jump around a little bit. Move-in day. What's the vibe on move-in day? What is the expectation? There's someone who doesn't want a helicopter, but they also don't want to leave their kid hanging. What should they expect?
I'll answer that. I say don't stay 9 days like we did. I
How
would
long did you stay?
9 days. But that's also because we actually fell in love with Portland ourselves. Like we're crazy about Portland, and I have a bit of envy with Andrew's experience with Reed compared to my. And I went to a good university, but my experience at university was so is so is so weak sauce compared to what Andrew's going through at Reed. So there's a bit of envy there. But yeah, I would say at least stay a night, especially if you're traveling from the East Coast or anywhere outside of West Coast, stay a few nights and then be flexible with, does your kid want you around or not? Yeah.
Yeah, basically what I did, because we were coming from the East Coast, is we got there a few days early so the jet lag would be over. And we went to IKEA and picked up a couple knick-knacky things. You don't need a lot for the rooms, especially if you're coming from the East Coast. You don't want to bring too much because then you either have to store it or ship it back. My kid's fairly independent, so they didn't really want me involved. And, like I ran a couple of errands for them and made sure they had food to eat. Their roommate, they're living in a split double, which means it's kind of like having two private rooms that are attached to each other, which is kind of nice. The roommate's parents were a lot more involved, but I don't think it was because the kid wanted them involved. I think it was because the parents wanted to be involved and they were letting the parents do that. So yeah, but they do have some programming for the kids when they move in. So it's nice to stick around for that and spend the night. And then, the day after they're moved in, you can probably head home. I think I stayed an extra day in case my kid needed me to run out and get something, but I didn't hear from them. They didn't need me.
I will mention very briefly, due to the location where we live, we didn't have as many challenges. And so the moving day itself, what I will comment on is the amount of structure that I was really impressed by. There were a lot of support areas where parents could go if they weren't sure where they needed to go to help their kid get moved in or get supplies, like big, large buckets that people could use to carry their things from their cars to their dorm rooms. There were a lot of support bases. And so I think the move-in was very, very structured and well organized. And they also had some guy giving out free ice cream, which I thought was awesome.
That was Cornell. That's great, my colleague. So for East Coast parents, how's it been adjusting to the time difference and trying to stay in touch? And what are some unexpected challenges when you're crossing so many time zones? So things you would have wanted to know before having been so far away.
Well, my husband's from Australia, so for us, the time zone difference is not nearly as challenging as trying to stay in touch, like if we want to talk to his parents. You do need to be a little bit aware of the time difference. So you don't want to call your kid first thing in the morning on the East Coast time because they will be asleep. We use texting a lot, and our kids and us will sometimes put do not disturb on our text. You can always override it if it's an emergency, but that way we don't wake each other up. But yeah, I mean, our kid, it's not a matter of, I think it's a matter of that they're busy as opposed to time zone being an issue. And it's pretty quick to adjust in terms of when you get out there, them getting used to the time zone. I think the biggest challenge for us was over Christmas break when they came home they were trying to, stay in touch with their friends, and they were doing some online gaming. And because they're on the East Coast, it got really late at night. So we had to figure out where in a house can our child be talking to their friends that won't keep us awake. So it's more the adjustment of when they come back home and they're trying to talk to their West Coast friends, how can you work it out as a family or a household so everyone's happy? Because we don't want to put too many restrictions on them. They're 19 years old now, so technically they're an adult, and we don't want to say, no, you can't talk to your friends, but we wanted sleep.
Yeah. So we're gonna have a period of, some of the rumors and things that parents hear about Reed that they worry about. Some folks went, oh, well, they're not all Reed specific, but hey, drug use and abuse. What is the culture around that? What is the culture around mental health support? Do folks have actually, we sort of answered that. I'll just start off by, some of you have heard me say this, it is the bane of my existence, conversations about drug use, which I think are a couple of decades old. We take a national survey every year that compares us to other colleges, and our data is perfectly average in that way. There's nothing exceptional about Reed and other schools that are like Reed in terms of this academic standing. I think we also just have a different type of student who's looking at high school these days. But why don't y'all share what you might hear from your students or what they might say?
Reed is known to be such an academic college that if you were like a nerd, let's just say nerd or brainiac or like so academic nonstop, you're not considered, wow, this is a unique case. Like you're actually in the norm if that was you. And I think that's the feeling that Andrew gets on campus.
I don't think we haven't heard any pressure from Alicia or receiving pressure or feeling like she needs to participate. So, and she's never said anything about anybody pushing drugs on her or anything. So I think the rumor mill has gone crazy because I really don't see it happening. And I'm on campus quite a bit. I've done a few of these panels, we stop in and pick Alicia up, and I've been in her door. Like there's just, it's a rumor, I would say, from my experience and from Alicia's experience, and we haven't noticed it.
What do y'all know about any sort of mental health resources, or if a student, you probably thought about this, if my student gets hurt, if they get injured, if they get a cold, what were some of the questions you asked around those things, and what did you find out?
One of the things that I loved that I've mentioned before on these panels is that the community at Reed is all looking out for your student. Like I think Andrea had mentioned that, the community is the feeling that you get when you go to Reed, and the professors are looking out. Even our admissions officer, Maddie, every time we see her, she knows us. She says hi. She says, "Oh, I saw Alicia this week." So like everybody's looking out for everybody there. But also the one thing we learned from the student resource head, he said, if you call any number on the Reed line, like any phone number, it doesn't matter if it's the right one, somebody there will go, "Oh, I'll get you to that person." It's because they're also connected. So it's like, I'm having this or I'm feeling this. They'll be like, "Oh, let me let you talk to this person," so they'll connect you to mental health resources or, first aid or whatever, or if you need an academic, they're so connected there that no matter who you call, you will get an answer and you'll get connected with people you need.
That's great. So is there a parent day or week or anything for parents that happens on campus?
There is a parents' weekend. And like I said, I think we met some of the parents who were on this panel at the weekend. So we came out from we traveled from New Hampshire over there because we figured that's going to be one of the few times we actually get to see our kiddo, although we saw them minimally. And it was very informative. It was nice. We got to sit in on a Hume 110 class. And they have various, discussions and panels while we're there too. It was nice to meet some of our, the parents of some of our kids' friends.
right?
things like
And
that.
some of our kids' friends as well.
Yeah.
And see how they were, see that they were really getting along with everyone. And, we would be sitting there in the dining commons eating with them, and it's like, oh, you got to meet so and so.
Yeah.
And I'll answer a couple of questions just really quickly. We do have a health and counseling center right on campus proper. So you can see someone on campus. They can also refer you to resources in Portland. There's a clinic that's just 2 blocks down the street. Yes, you can have mental health counselors on campus. We also work with a healthcare provider that has virtual counseling services. We are happy to say that we have enough capacity for any student who needs it. And also, we do an assessment of your insurance to make sure that your insurance will cover you here in Portland. And if not, the college does offer some insurance. And so the same thing is true for food. If you have any food allergy concerns, we'll put you in touch with Bon Appetit, which is our food service. They will make accommodations for students. They're very good about that. How do students do some banking? How do your students how do you give them money if they need it? So banking, and tell me about the cash supply.
Well, our kid we've got an Apple Card, and they have like a sub account on our Apple Card, so they just charge things on that, and they have a debit card with their, they've just got an online bank essentially, and they have a debit card that doesn't charge any or reimburses you for the ATM fees. So that's how they get along.
Do your students need cars on campus? And I see some questions popping up in chat. Go ahead and put those in the Q&A function, and I'll let you know I'm not going to be able to get to all the questions that are coming in, so I am going to try to combine some of those. But how do folks get around do folks need a car on campus? If folks have fun with their friends off campus, what is it that they're usually doing?
I could answer that. Andrew's 19, and I don't know if you guys know this. So you've got the Uber Lyft in case the weather gets foul or it's really late, and it's better for them to take that versus public transit. But I love the public transit in Portland. It's very simple. Even going from the airport to Reed, it's not horrible. But aside from that, there's this other platform called Turo, Turo. And surprisingly, a lot of rental cars, they don't let you rent until you're age 24 or 21. The Turo lets you rent as early as age 18. And that might be an option in case let's say your kid wants to stay up at spring break. They might be able to rent on Turo for a whole week if they wanted to do like a trip to the cabin or somewhere else or the beach. For Andrew, he's going to go off campus his junior year, so just in a few months. And we are thinking about, getting him a used car so that he could get to and from campus and then also work more, easier, especially when it's late at night.
And our kid also has a bicycle on campus, and they like biking around too, because it's a fairly nice area to bike.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about, let me see if I can get this right, a little bit about advising. What does your student talked about advising on campus? Have they talked about their relationship with faculty on campus? Is there anything you can say about, if there is a faculty advisor or a student friend who's assigned to them at the beginning of school?
Alicia has met with her advisor many times, which, like you said about being jealous of their experience, I'm a little jealous of that. I don't remember having an advisor in college. So she's not even done with her first year, and she's been in the advising office a lot, and had to change a couple of things when her major changed a little bit. And it seems very helpful and very connected, like everything else I read.
I think part of the learning experience is based on the relationship between the student and the teacher. And Alicia ended up liking all of the classes that she took going through her first year because of the way that the teacher teaches it and the way that the teacher engages her and the other students in the class. And that being in an environment where she likes all of the classes that she's taking is fairly new for her compared to her experiences in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something, I'm combining a couple questions here. Um, what is something that surprised you about Reed? What is something that you think Reed does well? What is something that Reed could do better?
I came from a really big public school, and to get anything done, it was literally like government. To get anything done, you're in this long line, you're waiting in a queue, you're waiting online. Like we know the name of our financial aid advisor. We know that we know the name of the people in the offices. They know us. It really feels like Cheers, if you know that show. It just feels like you can get things done pretty swiftly. Maybe that's like every private school. I just don't know, but I do know it is definitely the case with Reed. Um, I really am. I'm not trying to be salesy or marketing about it. It really stumps me to think about anything that we could do better. Reed is a private school. You're paying private school tuition. I mean, that's just the fact of it. You have, it's the same cost, I believe, as an Ivy League. So you do have to consider that you're paying the same, but the quality and the teaching and the fact that there are no, your office hours is a professor. It's just that quality of education to me is amazing. Like I told Andrew in high school, if you work your butt off and you get the grades and you do what you need to do, we're gonna find the money. Like that's our commitment. And I think we stuck by that. And sometimes it's hard and sometimes it's not. But I think we're just so happy that he's happy and he's doing well, that it makes it worth it. So I don't know if that's answering the question. Obviously, coming from public, private tuition is just, we swallow hard. But also to Reed's credit, we got a really nice grant and we're very grateful for it. And I think that was compelling. Without that, it would be a much more daunting situation for us.
I'm so enraptured by your answer. I forgot to look up the next question. I think we answered, someone mentioned a little bit about public transportation and bus. We have public transportation, we have buses, we have trains, we have light rail. There's a zip car on campus. You can find someone that has a car. You can get an honored citizen pass, which is a bus pass for very cheap. The first year and sophomore year on campus are guaranteed. About 80% of our students live on campus. We've been able for 10 out of the last 11 years to satisfy all the need for housing. And our First Rest Hall is able to do that. The question about our graduation rate and retention rate. Someone said, why is the rate so low? It's not just COVID. It really is directly related to COVID. If you take a look at before COVID, you will see that our 4-year graduation rates and retention rates were on the rise. And when COVID hit, Reed was hit disproportionately because only 8% of our students are from Oregon. They're traveling from all over the world and all over the country. And for some schools, they stayed local and went to school. We had students that were trying to take classes in China that were like 1 o'clock in the morning. And it was difficult for our students. Immediately next year, you're going to see a 5-point increase in our graduation rate as we move away from those COVID years. I co-chair the Retention, Persistence, and Graduation Committee. Our target 4-year graduation rate is 85 to 90%. Having said all that, Reed continues to have a graduation rate that's in the top 20% of all colleges in the United States. We sort of talk about it like it's not good enough because we wanted to do better, but we're in the top 20% of all schools in the United States of getting people in and out in 4 years. And we are dedicated to making sure your student gets in and out in 4 years with advising and support. So I'm happy to talk about that in length about the services we put in place for that. Um, for you all, and this is for a family who's sort of early in the process. We were thinking about the application process, applying to Reed. What was the most challenging part about getting that in, wondering if you're getting admitted, figuring out all that stuff?
For us, it wasn't very challenging at all. Compared to other schools that Alicia applied to, the application process that Reed required one additional step. I think it was a CSS application of some sort, but it seemed like everyone there who we had to interface with had matters sorted. And so when we applied to Reed, and we also applied for financial aid to help support the costs, the FAFSA system was going through a new transition, and there were complications that many parents had to go through in using it. And so it was actually pretty refreshing that the application for Reed was fairly straightforward compared to the applications that we had to make for other schools. And so I was very happy about it. We didn't see any real complications at all.
Mhm. So we have someone, their student went to was at an active public high school, played sports, has a job. He likes the rah-rah vibe at times. But this is also someone who's curious, interested in learning in environmental studies. Is this a student that could feel at home at Reed?
There's a lot of clubs, like athletic clubs you can be part of. I know Alicia mentioned she wants to join rugby for next year, so she's really excited to be on which is crazy for us, but is awesome. I feel like there's activities that you can be rah-rah for, like the smuggling of the owl statue, which I just experienced last Friday. That is a lot of fun. There's just such a community that everything can be a fun environment for something like that. And if you want to do sports, you can go into Portland and do their sports.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't consider Reed to be, an athletic school in terms of they don't have the big football team with but there's other things that they have, like there's music and there's dancing, there's the Ren Fair. So it's a different kind. There's definitely a spirit there, and there's definitely people who get excited about things, but it might not be the typical, football stadium kind of feel.
My favorite thing to tell families is that a half of our students were varsity athletes. And I tell folks that because the folks who sit at the cafeteria together may not have sat together in high school, but they sit together here. Because the thing that brings them together is they care about each other, they're curious about each other, and they love ideas and learning. And so for me, my favorite part is having that diversity in our application pool, because we see it, we actually think that's attractive because we're trying to bring different people in. So I will say, if it feels right for your son, we want to try to make it work. I think you said son. I apologize if that's incorrect. Let's see. We are hoping for a school that values diversity and different cultures. Can you speak about your students' experience with that?
Yeah,
Well,
I could speak to that real quickly. We visited schools as far east as the Midwest and Chicago, and one of Andrew's number one schools, sorry, Reed, but his number one school was um completely white. Like I don't the whole 2 nights or whatever we were there, we the only other Asians we saw were the ones that were visiting campus. And I think it was just too much for us to handle as far as, you know, putting Andrew in a situation like that for 4 years. So that was a quick no for us. And then when we got to Reed, we felt really comfortable. Even though statistically, maybe the Asian population is less than, where I went to school, but coming from Los Angeles, I think we're kind of spoiled with the amount of diversity we have out here. We don't feel uncomfortable at all. Being on Reed campus, being in the city of Portland. So I feel like for that, I don't see anything that would make us feel odd or uncomfortable.
Mhm.
And I think also like our kid is trans, and there's a lot of sort of diversity on that sort of spectrum as well, which, it was funny when we were out there, and it might be just somewhat self-selection, but it's like, oh, here's my friend so and so, and she's trans, and he's, all this sort of stuff. So that was sort of one of the reasons that Reed, resonated with our kid, as well. Just they felt safe there. They felt like they could be who they were without fear of reprisal or anything like that. It's not to say that obviously there are all sorts of people there, but they felt accepted.
yeah. I mean, when we were touring colleges, there was no comparison between, we went to other colleges that were supposed to be open and accepting, and it was just a completely different culture when we went to Reed, where it's like you go to the admissions office and they had the pronoun pins. And it wasn't anything, it was like little understated things like that that just made it feel comfortable.
I've been living in Oregon for much of the duration of my kids' lives, and Oregon is not a very diverse state. And so for the entirety of my time here, diversity in terms of what my kids have been exposed to has been very important for me. I've been fortunate that the environments that I've lived in, my kids have been able to get themselves involved in a diverse environment. But to appreciate Reed, I had to be there. I had to be there, and I had to see the demographics. I had to take some time away from Alicia and walk across campus myself to see what was there, to listen to the music, just to get a feel and a vibe. And I left feeling very pleased with the level of diversity that I experienced when I was there. And Millian pointed out a little bit earlier, I think the question pertained to COVID. From a demographic standpoint, Reed is quite a bit of a melting pot. It gets people from lots of different places outside of Oregon. And my first experience there was when I went there for an orientation, sitting down on a panel, sitting down on a table with a bunch of other parents. I was the only person from Oregon, and I just found that I was just tickled by that. And so I've been concerned about diversity, especially for my kids. And I was happy to see that Alicia settled in very, very well at Reed from that standpoint.
Are there, tell us a little bit about the roommate matching process for your student. What was that like?
Oh, well, for our kid, they already sort of made up their mind based on their interactions with people on Discord. And then they went through the questions that, on the roommate selection questionnaire sort of thing. And they're like, oh, I got a 93. It's great. Right. We already knew that, but this confirmed it sort of thing. And so far, I think they haven't had any issues, right?
Well, yeah, I was asking my kiddo, do you think you're going to room with the same person next year? And they said, yeah, we're going to talk about it because they're getting along fine. Like I said, they met on the Discord server. The individual asked Pip, oh, do you want to be roommates? And Pip was like, sure. And they just happened to match up on the roommate questionnaire. So Reed went ahead and let them room together. So it was pretty smooth for them.
Mm-hmm.
You all alluded to this. I'm merging two questions again. How often does your student come home? And, and how often do you talk to them? And maybe you can talk about the parameters you set up to make sure that you stay connected.
I think one thing that I could tell everybody is make sure you set up either a weekly appointment with your kid. If you don't set up an appointment, you will catch them in office hours or at class or walking to their job or with their group or eating. They are very, very busy. So I regret not setting that up as a precedent, like every Sunday at 6 p.m. we're going to talk for 10 minutes. So like what other people say, there's a lot of texting. I'll literally be texting and then I'll call and he's like, I can't talk. Whatever. But as far as travel, we're lucky. It's like a 2-hour flight from LA to Portland. So it's very, very easy. Having said that, he doesn't come home. So this summer he chose to stay up because he's got a couple jobs, which is great. But again, I love Portland. I would really explore Portland and see how much you love it because you might end up being the one that travels and making a long weekend out of it. I think it's beneficial. Yeah, he doesn't come home a lot.
So I'm going to answer this question quickly because we've had 6 families who've asked some version of this. What is our response to the possibility of losing federal dollars for funding or influence on policies? What I'll say is we Reed is in a good position in terms of supporting our faculty who have any federal research dollars. We're in a good position to support our students for financial aid. And we've signaled that commitment. If if any federal funds were taken from students, that we'd be able to step in and provide that financial support. And this is a place that respects identity and values and students' backgrounds. And so we don't feel that we are in a position to become suddenly a different institution than what we are right now. And I think that's also what I hope you're hearing from families is that students come here, they feel comfortable, they see themselves reflected in the students here, and they see other students reflected in the students here. And I think that makes it a better learning environment and a more satisfying social experience all the way around. So I want folks to feel really confident about that. Um, I don't know if y'all can answer this, but I'm just going to throw it out there. Are there school-led opportunities for students to meet in social gatherings? So let me ask it a different way. Um, you've all kind of said my student found their people. Did the school have any role in helping them find their people? And if so, what did that look like?
The school has a million different clubs and activities and stuff like that. But the one that I found Alicia really loved, she's not as involved in the clubs, but they had a fire night. I don't remember what it was called, but they had the student-led fire performance, but it was organized by the school. Million, you know what it's called, but
Weapons of mass distraction.
yeah.
Yeah.
But they also have, regular dances and activities like that. So I feel like there's a lot going on all the time.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned the Discord server that Pip was on before they got to campus. And I think that was something that somebody at Reed had advertised on, if it was somebody at admissions that set it up. So Pip already had kind of a skeletal social group before they got to campus, and they're still friends with all those people, and they've met other people on top of that. And weapons of mass distraction they've done some singing. I'm not exactly sure what else they've done. I just know they're always busy.
Yeah.
I tried to quickly find weapons of mass distraction, but we have 3 minutes left. So I'll, like I said, I feel remiss for not being able to get to all of the questions. I think I have a dozen questions left. Reed does have policies on campus that does enforce cannabis is not legal on campus. We do have a drinking policy. We have to abide by federal rules. We have public safety, but these are folks who students, I think, feel like they keep them safe. They have trading cards that you can collect them all. And the idea is that you'll connect with folks from public safety. We have an outdoor recreation center that folks can get involved in. We have a couple students that double major again. Most of them are more likely to do a combined major, which is two majors combined in one, but one thesis. A major, our interdisciplinary major that pulls from several departments, our minors or contract major, or the faculty member will say you want to do two things that talk about your curriculum and how we put that together. If students transfer out, the number one reason at every school in the United States is financial, because it's easy to say. But when we look deeper at students, one of the things that we are doing in terms of retention and making sure people are there is making sure that there is no point in their career that they feel like they're not academically supported and feel that they know what their path is. And so being connected is the biggest factor in helping people stay a part of any campus community. And that's a lot of what we've done. We've created a campus community and climate committee from the president this year, and it's composed of faculty, staff, and students. And the whole goal with that is that people understand we're in a community that's accountable to each other. For parents, we're short on time. Can you give the folks here any last parting advice? We know this is a weekend where folks are going to make a lot of decisions. Same with next weekend. Help them out. What can you share that's going to help them understand not only what Reed might offer them, but help them in terms of making this decision for the college search?
I think the most important thing is to listen to your kid, find out where your kid's going to feel comfortable and where they're going to be at home. Because if they're not going to be happy, you're probably going to end up wasting a lot of money. So make sure your kid has like the deciding vote, if financially possible. I should put
Right.
out
I mean,
but-
strike off the things that you just absolutely can't afford, obviously, but beyond. But I will say that, Reed, we got a financial aid package, and our situation had changed somewhat, and we went back to our the financial aid officer, and we're able to. They came forward with more funding, right? So if that is a concern, then Reed is committed to meeting 100% of your need, whatever that really means. But I mean, they did come back to us with more, so that's something.
Mhm.
If you are able to make it onto campus to see and experience what your kid is going to experience for the next 4 years, do so.
Yeah, and I will add, what you could do now is normalize just getting mental help. High school is a high pressure environment as well, but then that transition to college, that life stage, it deserves some time to talk to a professional and to make that transition successful. I think normalize for your kid, hey, if you want to get help, you should just raise your hand. Most people should raise their hand because that's a huge difference in your lifestyle. I think that's something that I didn't do when 2 years ago that luckily Andrew is very exposed to getting mental health and he raises his hand when he needs it. But I think just know that Reed does a great job about making sure that those resources are available to you.
Rungi, Andrea, Dave, Jolene, Molly, we called you up about a week ago and said, "Hey, can y'all do this?" And you said yes. And so we are eternally grateful for all of you. And I think our families are grateful too. And I saw a couple people chat out and say, "Hey, this is exactly what I wanted to know." And so I think if there's any way for you to express appreciation, whether that's snapping or hands up, let's do that for for our panelists. And I want our families to know that we mean it sincerely when we say our job is to help you make an informed decision about where your student is for 4 years. And we're not salespeople. We're just here to provide information so you can figure out what your reality is going to be and to be completely transparent in that way. So I hope you have a great night. Please be in touch if you have any questions. Visit campus if you can, if you haven't already. Best of luck, and we'll talk to you soon.